And welcome to Life Support Live, the weekly Star Trek show that can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
As a famous starship captain with a Franco-British accent once said. But as another one once said also, a little earlier and a little later, wherever our mission takes us, we will make sure to have a little fun along the way.
Hello, everyone. I am clinical psychologist Dr. Ali Mattu.
And I'm Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek.
And
one of us
Dr. Trek, my mic is and one of us has a mic falling into view screen, which is not good. Okay, hopefully that will stay. Yes, and we will let you figure out who the real doctor is, and also who is not the real production expert, obviously, apparently. Okay, so on this episode, we are talking non-spoilers about the new episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. It's inspired our topic for today, what is that topic, Larry?
Well, our topic today, Dr. Ali. You should get Ali the mic tech in there.
I know.
No, our topic today is inspired by Lower Decks Episode 2, but we will spread it to the whole Trek universe. Mm-hmm. Finding your places. We said finding your place, and then you noted that people have more than one place. So yeah. I keep including a plural S in parentheses at the end of that. Finding your place.
Finding your place, finding your calling. Where are you supposed to be in this big, wide multiverse that we all live in? So one question to get things started is, what's your favorite story about a character finding its place in Star Trek, finding their place in Star Trek? There's so many to choose from.
There's so many.
As this always happens with Larry and I, as we're putting together our plans for this episode, we're like, well, are there any stories really about that? And then like 5 minutes later, we're like, how are we going to squeeze all these into the show? There are so many stories about this topic. So we want to know what your favorite one is.
Yes, absolutely. This one started off with a couple, and then like 3 minutes, and then bang, 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 bang. Well, and I know everybody out there in the chat is going to say, well, you got this. It starts with this Lower Decks episode, has 2, basically. But that got us rolling, and then, yes, we've got plenty.
So Larry,
to see what everybody's going to say too. Yeah.
For those lifers who it's their first time here, what is Life Support Live, and what are we doing here?
I've wondered that many times. No, we're having a lot of fun with Star Trek, as we often do in these spaces, but we're doing it through a mental health lens. So we're geeking out, but also between Dr. Trek and Dr. Ali, hopefully we'll have a lot of new insight on Star Trek and the way it's made, but also some takeaways for you in your daily life. And it looks like madness here, but we're actually going to start off here in just a second with in the briefing room and talk about some Trek background, and then Ollie will open up the counselor's log, and then we'll get to some away mission points for you to take away. And along the way, somewhere later on, I will have a K3 factor for you. What's the K3 factor? Well, geek out over close-up stills of Dr. McCoy's bio monitors, and hang on, and I'll tell you. Oh, and you can, yes, chat in. And later on, do we have a frame, Dr. Ali? Oh, we do have a frame. Yes,
we have a frame. Yeah.
Excuse me.
An overlay.
I'm just not big enough. Your mic is falling and my frame is collapsing.
We all need structural integrity here.
We do. Get the SIF up. See that Skype banner up there? Life Support Live host. We have not had anyone join us on camera in a few weeks.
It's been a while, yeah.
The chat room. Don't forget that when we open hailing frequencies at the end, you can Skype in and talk with us.
Yeah. So that's a great introduction. And with that, Larry, let's jump into the briefing room. So this is where we start to dive into today's theme. And I would just love to get your non-spoiler thoughts on Star Trek Lower Decks Episode 2. This is Envoys. A non-spoiler description, I think it's safe to say that we have part of the crew is on an away mission, and part of the crew, one person in particular, is struggling with their place on a starship. This is a person who starts to kind of question, well, maybe I should look at a different division here. And this was just
Duty division.
yeah, this is such a fun
And
story where we saw someone go from operations and yellow, the yellow gold of operations, to red command, um, to security yellow, not to be confused with operations yellow, and also medical blue. So, Larry, what were your non-spoiler takes on this episode?
no, I enjoyed it, and I want to say up front, as always, that we realize that we love having everybody around the globe, but hang in with us. I
Yeah.
realize that they've still not, because of COVID catapulting life life support. I wish catapulting Lower Decks to the front of the pack ahead of Discovery. The international distribution deals were not in place yet, and they're coming along. And some folks around the world have found ways to see it, but we're not acknowledging that here or on Facebook on our group page. But we know that a lot of you have seen it, but a lot of you haven't. So we're
Yeah.
going to kind of dance through it as an inspiration to kind of have it both ways, as it were. But I love this episode. I thought, and I've seen a lot of reaction, that a lot of people enjoyed this better than the pilot because it didn't feel like it had to be so piloty, both in introductions and also in making some crazy, wham bam visual moment tone statements that grab new viewers maybe. And this can be more settled in. They've got a long way to go. But this one really uses the Star Trek background, and this has become the episode already where everyone is frame grabbing to grab. They've done a great job of aliens in the background,
Yeah.
and some of the canonists this week, the last couple of days, have been frame grabbing and going crazy, and even going, "Oh, I know those are because they're on an away mission, and it's a planet that has a lot of different settlements from different cultures. So you're seeing a lot of people there, and people are freaking out with joy about some of the bizarre, like they're canon aliens, but they were seen once, and maybe not even named on screen. Anyway, that's a sidebar. That's fun. I enjoyed it, and you still have to get used to, as we will talk about here, and these people, and it's all about to the journey, but everything is still heightened. Everything is still comedicized, if I can say that word. But
You
it's
can say
still
whatever word you like, Larry.
heart. Still a grain of truth. Huh?
I said you can say whatever word you like, whether it's real or not.
Is that a point in the drinking game? Larry made up a word? I don't know.
I don't know. We could add it to the list, though.
Jared next.
I agree with you, Larry. I really enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed it more than the first one, just because you can settle in a little bit more, and the expectations aren't so out there. This episode gave me a very strong Futurama feel, which I like. I think Futurama is the better kind of vibe for Lower Decks than Rick and Morty. And the first episode felt like it leaned a little bit more Rick and Morty. This one felt like it leaned more Futurama. And I really enjoyed it. I felt like there was aspects. The two storylines here felt so much on the foundation of Star Trek stories. We had the away mission story was full of Star Trek stuff. The B storyline about where's this character's place on the starship, that was all about the different branches of Starfleet, and it was and at the heart of it all was a very humanistic story about connection. And so I really enjoyed it, and as I started to watch this episode, I thought this was a really great topic for us to explore. What is your place? What is your calling? And it's something I think a lot of us might be experiencing right now. And this is why we chose it for this week's episode. I did a workshop a few weeks ago for the Producers Guild. And one of the things that came up in that discussion is a lot of folks with productions being shut down and the uncertainty of when those productions are going to be back up, they're reevaluating. Do I want to be in this field? Do I want to be in this career? Some by necessity because they just aren't able to find a job right now. And so that's happening for some people. Other people are they're finding themselves being in roles that they didn't quite expect to be in. I mean, Larry, you and I never imagined that we'd be hosting a live Star Trek show that's about all of the stuff that we talk about on light support. A few months ago, this was never really
Right.
in the cards for us. I never thought ever about doing something live. I know you had been doing live stuff for a while, but it was not something on my plate. So some people by necessity are being forced to change. Some people are considering change, and we're all kind of left wondering, well, where's my place? How do I figure this out? What am I supposed to be?
Yeah. Or what am I? And things are in such chaos and such flux. Where will I be in 6 months or a year, or
Yeah.
whatever? I do want to say, and again, we're dancing around not being too spoiler for the episode. If there's anything you say, this is what I got into talking, reminding us all that it's animation, as if we need a reminder. But we're getting to some of the fanisher moments. The fanisher, boy, I'm just on a tear today, aren't I?
That's
The,
that would be your second word of
that would, yeah.
the second Larry Nemecek trademark word.
The more the more fanly aspects of this. No, the situations that inspired our theme today about finding your place.
Mm-hmm.
You could say that both of them, in the animation style of 22 minutes, are either a little contrived or a little accelerated. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
And not so much there about it being animation, but about it being a little sitcom-y, about a
Sure.
little situation comedy, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, we can acknowledge that. In fact, Mike McMahon has been talking lately about, and people have been picking up about how it feels more like a family comedy or a workplace comedy than it does an animation show or sci-fi animation, but which is all to the good. So I'm going to say yes, as we're going to look at these in a human microscope, under a human microscope, the one in particular where he's sampling of, the whole reason he's doing it is a little flimsy. And if we're talking about relationships, which we're not yet,
No.
you almost wonder where his heart lies, like what's behind this. But it's kind of wrapped at the end, so we're not going to worry too much about that. It's taken care of. And the other situation where someone questions their entire, what they've been training for suddenly does come on a little rushed, but again, to me, it's just heightened in the comedy
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the moment.
Yeah.
And they still, and both paths, both arcs, still provide us with fodder for what we're talking about today, and also as a mirror to hold up to look at some of the other arcs we can talk about of people across the rest of Trek that did have several episodes and several years to develop.
I have to acknowledge that Scott wants you to know, Larry, that don't worry, Shakespeare made up lots of words too, and Linda is coining
Well,
these Dr. Trekisms, which I love.
okay,
I
TM,
love that. Yeah, TM.
you guys are great. I'm sitting here trying to catch up as we speak. So
um, so let's
so
kind of jump in.
that's the dossier for Envoys, I would think.
Folks have mentioned a lot of characters here. Some that we were planning to talk about, some that we haven't really thought of yet. Larry, I just want to acknowledge some of these because they're really great. Jared has mentioned Nog, which is definitely on our list. We want to talk about Nog. Zahir is mentioning Data, and Data's journey throughout. Now, even with Star Trek Picard, we see a lot of. Heidi says Data's long road, and it's definitely a long road that stretches all the way to one of our most newest series now.
Getting from there to here was a long way. And you know what? When we talked about this theme, inspired by the Lower Decks episode, inspired by Envoys, I think we were, or at least I was, we were talking. I think we were texting this
Yeah.
week more than we were talking.
Yeah.
But I think I was thinking more in a career mold.
Yeah, me too.
As far as how, but all of these are valid. But our place in the universe can be more than our work.
Yeah, exactly, which we're going to get into. Yeah. Libby also mentions Rom here. Libby and Zahir, we had a moment when, not Libby and Zahir, but Libby and Jared. We had a moment when Larry and I were were discussing this, and when we came to Rom, we were like, yes, we need to talk about Rom. Rom is a great character that really shows this. So we're gonna dive into that. Zahir also mentioned Seven of Nine. I think that's a really great character to explore this. And then Linda mentions Wesley, which is absolutely, his whole place in the space-time continuum, I think, is something for us to explore. So a lot of good characters. And Zahir just mentioned Worf, who is also on our list over here. So I think we could go as far back as Sulu. I think Sulu is a great place for us to start, where we don't see as much of his trying to understand what his place is, Larry, but we do see an evolution from him being largely the flight officer to his transition to command and his taking over of the Excelsior. I think that's just such a lovely arc, especially from that first moment when he sees the Excelsior in Star Trek 3. And what does he say? He's like,
I think she's a beauty, isn't that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then his arc to Star Trek 6 and taking command. And we see elements of that in the Kelvin timeline too, when Sulu's first given command in Star Trek Into Darkness. He's a character where you see it a little bit, but we don't necessarily see some of the struggle that we're talking about. If we want to talk about that, I think...
I was going to say, the original series, by nature, was meant to be pretty talk about the standalone episodes, even through the movies. And again, we're kind of talking about this through the veneer of career, finding your place as a career, as a job, as a calling, versus just your place. We all have to find our place in the universe as well. You know, what am I going to do? But also, am I going to have a family? Am I going to be mated? Am I going to have kids? Am I not? Where am I going to live? You know, what other functions in family and relationships outside of a work career? I mean, that's all we got. We were kind of looking at work, but the original series was of a time when, you know, static was good.
Yes.
Rapid development wasn't. But if you do that, you have to include Spock then, if you're going to talk about your place in it. You go from young, and you know what? And Strange New Worlds may give us a lot more of that, because we've already had the hints from short treks about young, unsure Spock, to to shouty Spock, to I'm more Vulcan than thou Spock, a little bit like Worf.
Yeah.
You know,
and I think it depends on the angle.
Human half after Beecher, and then life and death, and then
and then rebirth. Of course. Well, being dying and then coming back to life, that would definitely falls into finding your calling and finding your place. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely talk about Spock. I think the angle we were kind of looking at here was more the things that give your life meaning, which I think even in that definition, Spock, man, but Spock is the ultimate Star Trek trump card. You can play Spock in any topic we have had every single week of this show. One of these weeks are Spock. One of these weeks are Spock. One of these shows, our topic should just be Spock. Just Spock. Because we could do that. There's a lot of good.
I just have a new line I guess I can use now. It's, are you playing the Spock card? Good for any Star Trek debate. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So let's dive into the Next Generation era, because we have a lot of characters we want to talk about. The first one, Larry, that seems to be really fits this is Wesley. So let's dive in and talk about Wesley. We see this really wonderful arc here with this character who, when we first meet him, is very excited about careers in Starfleet.
In Geek Starfleet.
Yeah. We see him enlist. We see him struggle at the Starfleet Academy with the truth, with everything that happens related to, is it Red Squad?
Yes.
Yes.
Nova Squad. No, it's
Nova Squadron. Red Squad is Deep Space Nine.
Red Squad,
yes. Yes. We're Red Squad and we can do anything. Red Squad. Oh my gosh.
Raise the red squad! Raise the red squad! Okay. No, no. Forget that.
And folks, that's your cue. We're gonna have some more Rectagino.
Yeah.
But we see him leave Starfleet. We see him join the Traveler, and then he's back in Nemesis for a fraction of a second.
He goes to Traveler and back. That's what that was. Right.
So let's talk about this character. What's he going through in terms of trying to figure out what his place is in this whole universe?
I think, and you know, in a Star Trek series where so much is about the academy and service, where it's a specified structure,
Yeah.
you know, uniforms and ranks and all of that, and all the stuff, and it's almost like there's a dichotomy of you're either like born to it or you're not. And in fact, we had lower decks. You know, one of them was about where do I fit, which groove am I in, but the other one was, am I in the groove or not?
Right.
And it's almost like you say, well, of all the plots, all the arcs of all these characters we might look at today, that might be the easiest one or the most token Star Trek one. Am I Starfleet material or not? And we have that across the way too. It's Wesley never questioning the fact that his dad was Starfleet and his mom was Starfleet, and of course I'll be Starfleet. And then
he lives on the Enterprise.
And he lives on the Enterprise. He's there already.
Thinks he's such a hot shot because he served on the Enterprise for a minute.
Yeah, he was born to it. It's like people born in L.A. They fall out of bed and think they can act. But but he gets to a point when he's 16 and 18 and 20 that all of the should-be's and wannabes don't add up. He has the Nova Squadron incident. He has great, second guessing. Not even so much the game invasion because he's a hero there with Ashley, but with that travel episode with Final Journey, he really has a crisis of confidence, or not of confidence, but a crisis of assumptions. And he really sees that there might not be all that he thought, and he has a vision quest with his dad again, with Jack Crusher, and he decides that all of this that built up is not really. It was a false buildup, and it was a controversial show to write. This was Ron Moore's take, and there's a lot of other aspects of that show. But it's the last we see of him, and they're wrapping up. It's seventh season. They're wrapping up all the characters they can. They're trying to put a bow on everybody.
Yep.
And then by the time the fourth movie runs around, they're like, "Oh, this is our last movie. Now we're feeling nostalgic on a movie level." And right married. Let's put everybody at the head table where we got to have Wesley.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, he gave up on the Traveler. He gave up.
Or he's just dropping in. As you do for a wedding, Larry.
Perform, and you just sit there. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure they sent, the intergalactic space-time continuum invitation. He got it. He can drop in and out. He can go anywhere in space-time. It's fine. Well, I really like Wesley's arc, and one of the reasons why I like it's a similar reason why I like Jake's arc as well, is Wesley's dealing with something that I think so many of us deal with, are these expectations from parents. Yeah. And whether they're directly communicated or subtly communicated, some of us believe that we need to do XYZ thing because maybe our parents do XYZ thing. I mean, for generations, humans didn't have a lot of choice of what do I do? What's my place? Well, your place... Yeah, your place... Families worked on this farm for 100 years. Your place is on this farm, There weren't a lot of opportunities to go in different directions. And Wesley deals with some of that. I don't think Beverly ever says you need to enlist. I don't think his dad ever said that. But his dad is this larger-than-life figure in his life because he's not in his life. He only has these memories of him. And look, I mean, he's serving on the Enterprise, the flagship of the Federation. Picard was also his dad's CO. I mean, there's all of these signals that are saying, Starfleet, 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 Starfleet! And then it's not the right fit when he tries to go down the path. So many of us have experienced that ourselves.
And that always hits that pressure. I mean, I not so much about whether to join Starfleet or not, but I remember feeling the pressure at 18 of like, okay, I've got to pick a college major and a minor,
Yes.
and whatever I do is going to affect me for the rest of my life, and it does to a great extent. But it's like you have whatever you do, it's like that's the path, and there is no other road. I mean, maybe they have better counseling now, but when I was in high school, I just felt so much pressure, and I had a million interests. That was the other thing. I
Yeah,
was like
yeah,
going crazy. But the point here is whether it's that kind of a choice or the choice that we see Wesley, and we're about to talk about Jake, because
yeah,
Jake is like the other side of Wesley, where he's
yeah,
in that mold, and then ultimately decides he gets up the gumption not to go down a Starfleet path early.
yeah.
But my point here is all of us are making that when we're young people about on the threshold of adulthood, we're making this huge decision, and we may feel weighed down by these external factors and these expectations right at the very time in our life when we don't have much life experience
Yeah.
to bear up that. Later on is when we go, oh, I didn't have to worry about that. I could have done this. I wish somebody had told me this. And maybe an adult, an older, a real counselor, a guidance counselor, somebody that just has been through life, they might tell you on the side, and that would be
Yeah.
wonderful. But for 90% of us that don't get that, or 80% of us that don't get that, it's right at the worst time. It's like the most unbalanced time to be
Yes.
making a life decisions when you haven't had much life to base it on, and you're having to go by what other people tell you.
Well,
Or,
and the pressure that I mean, I really resonated with what you said about the pressure that those decisions are going to
which,
impact the
which is
rest
a
of your
lot
life.
of, which is a lot of finding your calling, because a lot
Yes.
of us are thinking about it at that age.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Look, I, I kind of grew up having no clue what I wanted to do. I knew I liked Star Trek, and I knew I liked history class, I liked photography class, and I liked some of my sciences, but it really depended on who the teacher was. I had no idea. There was no master plan that like I want to become a psychologist. Not at all. I like barely passed high school. I almost flunked out. I went to community college, and I took intro psych sort of by chance, just because it covers general education requirements. And then I really enjoyed it. And then I kept taking those classes, and I figured, okay, well, maybe there's something I can do with this. It was never a part of my plan. If you asked me at 5, 10, 15, I had no idea what I wanted to do. 18, 19, I didn't know what I wanted to do. As a kid, Larry, I wanted to be a pilot, because Pan Am was
You
like this.
look like a pilot, sir. You could be a pilot.
Thank you. Well, thank you for saying that, Larry, because
Oh,
you're the
play
only
one.
one. When I told that to someone, they said, pilots need to have perfect vision, and you have glasses. And at that point, I had just recently gotten glasses, so I was so sad because I was like, well, I guess I can't do that, and I guess that means I can't. I thought maybe being a pilot would help me get into space, and then so I
I
wrote
was
that
gonna say
off.
astronauting for you. Yeah, yeah.
I knew that you have to be able to, like, if you want to pilot the thing, you have to be able to pilot airplanes, and then they'll let you have a crack at the space shuttle. So I wrote that off, and then I thought, well, maybe I want to be a lawyer, and then that didn't really go anywhere. And then I thought, well, maybe I want to be an engineer, because I was growing up in Silicon Valley, and everyone was an engineer. And then I took one programming class, and then realized that that was not for me. So I connect with Wesley in that way, and to some degree Jake too in that way.
Yeah. I just thought it's like it's very interesting how Jake was very consciously the anti-Wesley, and nothing about this is about Will Wheaton. Or I was always mad at people that jumped on Will
Yeah,
when he didn't write the part. It was the chaos in the bridge of the first 2 or 3
yeah,
years,
yeah,
Next Generation. But still, the example of Wesley was, well, here's the issues we had trying to do this, however they came about. So Jake is going to be the ordinary, average, not gee whiz kid, but he'll have the heart of gold, and he'll have the, most of the time he'll have the moral stamina to even be a magnet beacon to Rom, even if with Nog, even if Nog pulls him into some shenanigans or whatever. But he eventually has the cojones to figure out his own path and decide early on he's not going to do Starfleet,
yeah.
and then to be his own man early. There's so much chat going on. I've been trying to catch up
Oh,
with
it's
people.
wonderful.
We
I
got
really appreciate these messages. Scott says, "I've never known for 1 second what I wanted to be when I grow up. It's something I always was. It's something
yes.
I was always jealous of. I'm guessing even as kids, friends would talk about wanting to be something, and I didn't get it. And then
Those
we had,
people that wanted to be a doctor or a
yeah,
lawyer or whatever, I was just so, yeah.
you're like, con.
In ninth grade, I had a semester careers class in ninth grade. We had to write a paper about what it was we wanted to do,
Yeah.
and I didn't. So when I was in ninth grade, the thing I wrote about being when I was an adult was owning a hobby shop.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I can totally see that.
I was so But part of that is when you're a kid, you get the Sesame Street, you get
Yeah.
the fireman, firefighter,
Yeah.
postman, doctor, whatever. You get those. There are so many billion niches of work and careerism that no one knows, and like
Right.
where you are, like
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
40 billion things I would have said I would have loved to do in the entertainment industry, but I was sitting in Oklahoma and I didn't know,
Yeah.
besides a writer or an actor, I didn't know what those were until I
Yeah.
read the Make Star Trek. But I didn't, I
Well,
didn't know what they were.
if you don't get exposure to these different career paths, they
Yeah.
might not even seem like a realistic opportunity for you. Like I had no idea there were all these people in the world of media making the stuff that I loved watching, and I wonder if I got more exposure to the production world, if maybe I would have wanted to become a filmmaker. And I worked in New York for a very long time, and I worked with a lot of people who were in the finance industry. And a lot of their kids wanted to go into the finance industry. And honestly, up until I lived in New York City, I didn't even know what the finance industry was or what these career paths were. So a lot of it also comes down to exposure and seeing someone like you doing this different career path, and kind of putting that seed of the idea here that, like, oh yeah, you can do this. I was into model making. I watched some movies, got interested in this stuff, and then like kept doing that, and now I work at ILM and I make models. If there's still people making models, right? Triangulum Audio Studios says, I grew up with an expectation to enter media and announcing, radio, etc. And for years I did that and hated it. So I went back to college, got my degree in graphic design and programming, but now I've gotten back to writing and announcing, etc., and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
It's timey-wimey. It's wibbly-wobbly, right, Larry?
Mm-hmm. That's a good. You should TM that phrase. That's cool.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure no one else has ever said that one before. Scott also says it changed a lot for me after the first time I flew. I wanted to be a pilot. After I got glasses, I wanted to be an optometrist. After I took Spanish, I wanted to be a Spanish teacher. After I took psychology, you get the point. I love that, Scott.
I thought he was going to say after I took Spanish, I wanted to be a Spain person.
I wanted to be a Spain person. Libby also says I wanted to be 150 different things, but not an administrative assistant type of job. However, after college, I realized I wanted to write, eventually to act, and to do a lot of things I actually enjoy. And I needed steady income with insurance to support those things I enjoy. I ended up being very good assistant, and in normal times do a lot of writing and acting. It works for me. Libby, that's a great comment too, because you don't have to get all your purpose and meaning in your job. And many of us do a job so that allows us to do these other things that might be more unpredictable in life. And for many years, I was doing a side gig of my YouTube channel and media. And at one point, those side gigs led me to my new job that I have now, working at a mental health startup. So it's like this. But when you're a kid, you think it's like this. You think it's a straight linear path, and if you're not on that path, you're left behind.
Well, I mean, if there's one thing I could go back and teach 12-year-old me or 15-year-old me or 18-year-old me, it's that there are so many different careers. It's so feathered. It's such a spectrum of work and jobs in any area that simplified, Sesame. I keep calling it the Sesame Street view of occupations, but that thing you get for kids when your kid's storybook. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a race car driver. I want to be a fireman. Yeah, it's so much more complex than that. Of course, you're a kid, and they're not going to layer on the complexity at you. The specificity of things at you. But by the time you're in high school, there should be at least an awareness of, okay, just because
Yeah.
you live where you live and no one in your life does these other 47 million things, here's an awareness. And they shouldn't make you be 2 years out of college and move before you realize, oh, I could,
Yeah.
if you're going to have aptitude tests and that was the first time I had all these things. I love history. And a lot of so much stuff in the Midwest is about teaching it and being a high school teacher or being, whatever. Well, if you love this, if you love acting in theater and tech, go teach acting in theater somewhere.
Huh.
And in high school, that means you're going to be an English teacher because very few, there's all these, as we just said, the accommodations, and sometimes you do it because of the situation and all that. But anyway, it's and then you think, well, then I've got to move if I'm going to do that, and I don't really want to move, and locational, and anyway, there's so many things that we don't even have the ability to pull the factors in and make decisions about. But I feel like we should move on because we
should move on. We should move on because there's so many characters for us to talk about. And as Libby says here, careers, infinite diversity, and infinite combinations. That's a good way to say it. So we were going to talk about Jake, and I think just one interesting thing about Jake is Jake seems to get a little bit more pressure from his dad about pursuing Starfleet. Would you agree with that, Larry? I think he was being nudged a little bit more in that direction than Wesley was.
I think Wesley felt the ghost of his father. I don't
Yes.
think he got it from his mother so much. The absentee mom that's fired, is transferred.
Yeah,
So
gosh.
I think he felt it more of a vacuum of the ghost of his
Yes.
dad. And then Jake's, everyone's like, no, we're not, no. Everybody else also looked at Wesley as a genius and thought, well, if you're going to use those gifts of, geniusosity, then the Starfleet's the best place to do that.
Is that the third Dr. Trekism?
I guess so. That's a bonus. But you know what I'm saying? And Jake, yes, I think Jake felt it a little, and not like they had enough going on with Dominion and changelings and wormholes and Paways that they're all focused on Jake's life. But I think his dad had just threw him a little bit.
And even though Jake sort of settles in on wanting to be a writer, it's explored in a lot of different ways. And Larry, one of my favorite things is when writers write about writers, or writers write about wanting to be a writer, because they have so much to say because they're writers about, whether it's Far Beyond the Stars or it's Jake's journey. Like, writing is so often portrayed as this like very noble, beautiful craft. It's just wonderful to see writers write about writing.
The red courage. Yeah.
Yes. But we see Jake as a reporter, as a fiction writer and author. It's beautifully shown in a lot of episodes. I'm blanking on the name of the episode, but when he's with that combat division.
That's I said the red pad of courage. That's nor the battle to the strong.
Yes, a really tough episode, and one that I think shows us an aspect of Starfleet that you never see. To the Visitor, which, gosh, that episode always makes me cry, especially now being a dad. We see Jake kind of grapple with what does this mean, and in that episode, we see him transition so much from wanting to be a writer to trying to rescue his dad to then being a writer again, and then trying to. Yeah.
It's all a big reset, so don't worry too much.
It's a happy ending, Ollie. Don't worry. Jake's a really great example of that. An example also of what you're talking about, what we were talking about, Larry, is he goes down a career path that is so different from everyone around him. That's something also I love about his story.
But again, original series, Next Generation, we were talking about how hard it is to find these arcs. Now, if you want to jump to Worf, I don't know. We've got 3 or 4 here that the ones that I worked on doing images for.
I
But
think we should do Worf. I think we should.
I think the same thing that the writers on Trek would complain about, and even though they weren't so shackled by Gene's perfect humans, that whole notion of how do we keep telling dramatic stories and not, not rely on just people having conflicts. And DS9 was about the collision of cultures.
Yes.
That's where the conflict comes from. Voyager is doing the same thing, only it's in a completely different realm of space with the mission of getting home. And how do you, make moral judgments about how you get home and the people you meet along the way on that one. And that was easier to see, and both of them brought in ne'er-do-wells, people who needed to be redeemed for whatever ills and sins they'd committed, whatever. I think I was just sitting here thinking, and it didn't even dawn on me the other night. I don't think we ever came across anybody from Enterprise that.
I put down T'Pol maybe because she does struggle with is it the Vulcan? What are they called? They're not the Vulcan Science. What's their Starfleet called, Larry?
It's just Vulcan. Yeah, just Vulcan Space Fleet. Vulcan. Yeah.
So am I there or am I Starfleet? I think she struggled a bit with that, which is a little bit different than what we're talking about. But yeah, can we dive into everyone's favorite character that exemplifies every theme we're talking about also every week? I guess it's Spock and Worf, because boy, this character, not only does he go through a lot of uniform changes,
well, it's signifying, the uniform is signifying what he's doing with life, right? So
yeah,
because he has a major heart change. He has a major change of heart when he stumbles into DS9.
Which heart are we talking about, though? His left or right heart?
What?
But
probably the conservative heart, so I would say the one on the right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the uniform change does represent his change in place, and we see him. Season 1 of TNG, he's just a security officer, right? Under
he's on the bridge. He's in command. That's that first.
So what's his role? What's his role then before Tasha Yar dies?
His role is to see if he can get beyond a 16-week contract. That's his. He was originally hired to be every other episode, but he looked so good in the pilot, they quickly made him, put him back there, which was probably another nail in the coffin of Denise Crosby feeling like she had no room to breathe as a character. And oh, look who's standing right there to take over. No, he was kind of the utility. He was an aft science roaming guy, and then he got to make, the Klingon lines,
to make the Klingon lines. Yeah.
And then he was there, and then it, melded. And no one, bringing him to DS9, how weird is that to take someone out of one cast chemistry set and plop them in another?
Yes.
And it worked. There are people who will argue that Worf actually works better as a DS9 character in all the chaos and the gray of DS9.
I agree. We just got the chat helped us out. Larry, it's the Vulcan High Command is the term we were thinking of. Thank you, Triangulum.
Like Romulan, like Klingon. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Is there a Vulcan Low Command? Are those the folks that are manning the, I don't know, spaceports on Vulcan? Is that the Vulcan Low Command?
When you come to Vulcan, the entity that is there it's Vulcan Space Central is the name of their space agency or their orbital. I could have told you that. So anyway, no, we never. I mean, okay, Vulcan High Command. At least in the pre-Federation days, that's what.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, Worf. And we do see Worf struggle with this. Worf definitely struggles with maybe not so much the transition to security on the Enterprise, but we do see him struggle with the transition to Deep Space Nine, how he spends some of that time connecting with O'Brien, but also seeing how different O'Brien's life is here. He ends up sleeping on the Defiant because that feels more home to him. he struggles with the way Odo does business and security on Deep Space Nine. We've talked about that in a previous episode. But Worf is, and not to mention all the times where he does have to go and serve more with Klingons. And so, like, what is his place from an occupation? And then, in some possible futures, we see him as ambassador. So,
Well, he's an ambassador. Now, the image I put together last night, spent
yeah,
some time on, you've got a moment where he resigns his Starfleet commission to go fight in the Klingon Civil War with
yes,
Gowron. That's not just emissary where he's playing or he's doing a ruse. That's him
yes.
actually leaving. And yeah, the bottom there, he's ambassador in the future.
Oh, I didn't see the all good things part of it right there in the
Yeah.
bottom. Oh, I love that.
Now that's him all good thinking. But he does leave to be at the end of DS9. He's leaving to go be Martok's ambassador, which he then doesn't stick with for very long because he doesn't like being an ambassador. But
right. We see him
that,
then.
you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
He retreated. He had the choice to be the chancellor in one of those
So
fluxy moments, and he said, "No, not for me." So yeah,
what's great about Worf is it gets back to what you and I were talking about. There's no one clear path for someone. Like, let's look at the different skills that are required. The skills required of being of becoming a series regular are very different than chief of security, are very different than strategic operations officer, are very different than someone who's serving in a Klingon fleet, and those are all very different than ambassador and diplomacy. And yet Worf is able to learn what the demands are of all these different roles, and really excel at them. And the same is true of all of us. There is no one clear path. There's just what's the next path I'm going to try, and I'm going to learn from and grow from and see where this leads to. Something I talk to a lot of patients about is people think career paths are like GPS navigation. You start here, you say where you want to go, and it's a clear direction there. Actually, I totally did that wrong. It would be a clear direction there. Okay. But it's not. Your careers are not GPS navigation, it's wayfinding. And wayfinding is how humans have navigated in the open ocean where you don't exactly know how to get from here to there. You have a general idea of, like, well, I want to go east, but you start where you are and you figure out what's the next best step from here, and then you go there. What's the next best step? You go there, and sometimes you kind of move around in a bit of a circle, but eventually you go in the kind of the direction you want to be. Careers are wayfinding. It's not GPS, and Worf does a really great job of showing us that.
yeah.
Oh, Larry, we didn't mention our always favorite, always suffering O'Brien. Um, we haven't talked about him yet, but is
Well, this
he?
was we've got to, and this is he starts off. This is what just kills me. The moment they said, "Oh, this guy who's an extra, that's glorified, we have him on. Let's do something funky. Let's have him be in the string quartet with Data." And ever since they did this once, then it becomes a big thing on DS9 that where they have 2 or 3 episodes where his dad wanted him to be a cello player, and it's like that Python skit where the guy runs away from his dad is a playwright.
Yeah.
It's a whole reversal on his dad's a miner and he wants to run off and be an actor. In this family, the dad is the playwright and he runs away to be a banker. And every time he comes home, his dad is griping at him about he could have gone to the theater, he could have been in the arts, but no, he has to go waste his life on being a banker. And that's how I always think of O'Brien there, because his dad wanted him to be a cello player, and O'Brien throws it away to run off to Starfleet as an enlisted guy. But anyway, it was choices, like he's finding his way, and then he's in command on the Enterprise early, and then switches to ops, and then it's a matter of scale. Am I going to stay in Transporter Room 3 my whole life, or am I going to get to be a regular on another series and be the chief of a broken down station? And get married and have kids and spend all my time with the guys at the bar on Friday and Saturday, playing darts and playing games in the holosuites. But again, that's finding a path, not as dramatic as Worf's maybe, but somebody who,
Yeah, and what I like about O'Brien is I think O'Brien speaks to things that we all something that Libby was talking about earlier here is you might have an hobby and interest, but you also need something that might be more reliable to sustain it. I get the impression that O'Brien was always interested in tinkering and messing with mechanics and engineering and putting things together. But there might not be a lot of career opportunities to be a mechanic in Starfleet. I don't know. But there might be more career opportunities to go in more of an ops con kind of role, and we see him then transition to transporter chief, where we do see him tinker with the Heisenberg compensator and all that sort of stuff. And then when the position opened up at to be the chief engineer at Deep Space Nine, or the chief whatever officer, what is
Chief
his
of
role?
Operations.
Chief
Yeah.
of operations, not to be confused with operations, which is not. Yeah.
He was not like for all. Yeah. You mean
But then.
when he got the chance to better himself and the rest of humanity?
I would say yes. That's I connect with O'Brien in that sense, that there are things that I've always had an interest in doing and have kind of done them on the side and trying to find ways of doing them more. O'Brien really represents that. But speaking of Deep Space Nine, Larry, I think we have to dive into what is probably the best representation of this, which is ROM. I mean, can you talk about more diversity
Yeah.
in your calling and your place
We
than ROM?
well we people, and especially since Aaron Eisenberg passed, people love to talk about how Rom, may be the most changed, evolved character, and some of that is about your place, not just in a career, but your place in the universe and your place, your character place. And Nog goes from the Peck's bad boy, boy, there's a dated reference, to the kid no one thinks is honest, and then is he honest enough to be in Starfleet? And then he winds up being a hero and loses his leg, and he's injured in combat, all of that. But it's almost like people are forgetting that, okay, his dad followed almost the same path, and then the ultimate, though. But Nog is not quite yet the president of the Federation or whatever. But Nog is, or Rom is when we last left him. He's the Grand Nagus now, and he started off as the dumb brother.
Yes.
One thought could do math, could do anything, and then he winds up with the secret, tinkering genius, and winds up as a Bajoran engineer and gets out from under his brother's thumb after unionizing the bar.
I sort of forgot that he becomes a Grand Nagus at the end until you mentioned it, because it's so not in keeping with where we first see the character, right? It's an easy
your
thing.
French card. That's yes, he winds up Grand Nagus. Yes.
I forgot for a moment, because it also parallels the transition we see in Ferengi culture. Part of that because of Moogie, part of that because of the Grand Nagus we see throughout the series. But it's a wonderful arc there for the Ferengi, and
With Sek.
and and Rom is someone who a lot of people don't really listen to his ideas early on, especially Quark. But once people start to really listen to him and understand that this guy who has a different perspective on things, he's got some good ideas. We should really listen to him. He has learned a lot about how to tech the tech at Quarks. Those holodecks in holosuites and Quarks get pretty dirty. They're pretty old, and Rom has managed to keep them going for a very long time. This person knows how to tech the
That
tech.
spatula will travel. I always loved that.
Yes.
There's a spatula in there.
Yeah, I know. He makes it work, and he's the person who came up with the idea of the self-replicating mines that mine the wormhole. He's done so much. So, to me, Rom is a great example of we need to listen to people who do see things differently, who do have a different perspective. Just because they might not fit into the way the group is thinking, that might be the exact quality we need, is a different perspective to help us through solving this problem. Rom is a beautiful example of that.
but when you say we need to help find those people, that's externalizing. If we're back to our theme here, we're talking about
Yeah.
a lot of times we don't have the support of anybody or the awareness or the care or the notice of anybody around. Even people that care about us, they may not notice that we're needing some help finding a calling, and
Yes.
it's finding it within yourself to make your own decisions, or finding it within yourself of knowing, it's like, well, I need to ask somebody. Well, that's great, but like who, where, what, and
Yeah.
that's, some things nobody can tell you externally, even though people want to help.
Sometimes people sometimes we go through things that Rom went through, which is no one really encouraging you to go down a certain path, or you not believing that that path is even right for you. Rom really represents that to me. And as people start to believe in him and as people start to encourage him more, you see how much he flourishes. Yeah, we all need someone to encourage us or give us the idea that yeah, you can't.
Oh no, wait.
Larry's on fire today. Take a drink. Have some more Ractigino. So yeah, I really love his journey, and I think Rom's journey is also what makes Deep Space Nine so great. Larry, is it takes these characters that you think have no significance to
Mhm.
galactic politics and shows you no, 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 this person is the most important character here. Everyone can contribute, from the Starfleet captain to the bar maintenance person.
Well, and before we leave this, it just struck, Damar or Damar, however you say it, starts off being the helmsman with one line
Mm,
to being like the number two most important guy in Cardassia, to being a horrendous alcoholic, to the guy who leads who leaves legit world behind. He leaves he's Rudolf Hess. He leaves the
yeah,
Nazis behind and goes
yeah,
parachutes into London. Um, and then he dies trying to liberate his people. Talk
yeah,
about it. I
yeah.
mean, there's all kinds of odysseys like that. Again, it's
Not to
like
mention a great connoisseur of Kanar.
absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. Which is
That man
here.
knows his Kanar.
He does, and decanters. But somebody, while
Yes.
we're on, I mean, it's like DS9 is full of people, like Odo's journey from not knowing who he is to knowing who he is, and he works for everybody, and they all still trust him. Or Kira going from, a refugee victim to a terrorist to being a building block of her government, and then most of all, maybe Cisco
Yeah.
going from
Yeah.
family guy in Starfleet to this, carrying a chip on his shoulder of guilt and anger,
Yeah.
to just run the damn station, to I don't want to be another hero. I'm not a religious guy. And then plunging off a cliff over
Yeah.
the fire.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of finding your places in DS9. It's part of it's just the structure of getting away from that. And then Voyager, you've got the whole thing of Voyager with the Maquis. We haven't even gone there yet, but
We haven't even. I mean, there's so much. I mean,
we should at
we.
least traipse through these, right?
I think we should do a lightning round here because we see Neelix.
But
Neelix is a character that really speaks to this. Whether you're interested in some Leola root soup, or if you're interested in a guide, you're interested in a negotiator, a ship's morale officer, and then later we see him as someone who's a part of a family. When I first watched Star Trek Voyager,
Dark Side. He was a
yes,
traitor. I mean, he was doing some dark deals there. That's what.
yes,
So he was
yes,
running away from being in the shady end of things.
and
That
he
almost
really needed a bath, Larry. He really needed a bath when we when we meet him. He's very excited about that
You're gonna
bath.
walk around in a fur trench coat. You're probably gonna need that.
um, when I first watched Voyager, he was one of the characters I least liked. Upon rewatching, I think Neelix gets a bad rap. I actually think Neelix episodes are good, and the Doctor I think doesn't hold up as well as on the rewatch. My views of the Doctor and Neelix have kind of shifted.
Oh,
Um, the Doctor episodes I'm like, they're hit and miss, and the Neelix episodes I'm like, not bad. But he's a character we see transition a lot. I think Zahir had a really great comment here where he says Kes is a character who ends up not finding her place. Her
and the
telepathic,
writers do it.
yeah, yeah. Her telepathic abilities start as an asset, but grow to a point where she can't control them, and then she has to strike out on her own. I think that's a really great point as well that we haven't quite tackled yet, Larry, which is what happens if your place is no longer with the crew. It's no longer where you are right now. Some of us, in order to pursue our calling or find our place, it means leaving where you are, going on our own, hero's journey. I think you and I have both done that to some degrees in our lives. I thought I was doing that, and then I returned back to California. I left California for 15 years and then came back. So, and you're obviously not in Oklahoma anymore. So I think to some degree both of us have done this, and we go back and forth, and life is messy.
Yes. The more life goes on, among the main things I thought about doing was being a teacher. Being a journalism teacher, being a music teacher, being
I think you would be a great teacher. Your students would love you.
The guilt of the last few years about me not being a history teacher in high school and making history alive and not just being a coach. Okay, answer the questions at the back of the chapter. Test will be all multiple choice and fill in the blank. Here's the names and dates you have to remember. That kind of history where everybody's like, what's the Smoot Hawley tariff? That kind of thing. No, and you see it now. We've had a generation or two that have no clue. And I was reading something yesterday about how dumb Americans are, the overall dumbest culture about their own history, much less the rest of the world. And we're paying for it right now.
We're paying for it now. Yeah. Wow. Well, that optimistic note. Let's talk about Tom Paris.
Zahir, you got Zahir up here talking about Quark before we
yeah.
Quark, yes.
Yeah, Quark is another good example. Let me throw that comment back up. Zahir's talking about, he ends up going out on heroic acts, a scene where he shoots a Jem'Hadar soldier to protect his bar, very Quark. I think when you look at these characters, you see the uniform they're in, you see their position, but there's so much more to each character beyond that. And I think a good example of this is Tom Paris. He starts out as an outcast, as someone who is taken out of prison, and the crew isn't so hot on him.
Back up. He starts off as an admiral's boy, so
yes.
he's a Starfleet brat.
Yes.
Okay, a little bit like Jake or Wesley maybe, but he's one that's really all over the place. So he goes to Starfleet. He screws up like Wesley did, and instead of rebounding from his mistake, he washes out and he goes and joins the Maquis. Yeah. But he screws up there. I mean, imagine being a double screw up. And then he's recaptured and he's in prison, and then Janeway says, "No, sir, son, I think I can make something of you and make you a regular."
Yeah. And not only is he on Voyager as this great hotshot pilot, but we also see him become a nurse, a medic, whatever his role is. We also see him take on that morale officer role more than I think Neelix does, with all of his holodeck adventures, and then also to become a husband and to become a friend. He's someone who does walk a lot of roles, and both in his personal life but also his professional life. I thought it was so cool to see someone who is both the pilot of one of Federation's fastest ships and also a nurse. Like, those are, you would think those would be such different skills, and yet he's able to walk those roles out of necessity because there's
Right.
not really a big medical team here. The medical team is a holographic officer.
He's
So
decimated, is what
so I
happened.
yeah, that leaves us with two series. Um, Larry, we talked about T'Pol a little bit. I think folks in the comments section,
It's interesting. Can we say real quick? I sent you a
please.
thing. You don't want to show it.
Yeah.
Paris. Who does Paris finally find an attraction to? B'Elanna, who's somebody who's having her own. Where's my place in the world?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
And these. Have you noticed how all these things go back to daddy issues? Either your dad's dead or you're dead.
Star Trek does have a lot of dad themes now
I
that
just
I think about
realized.
it. Even
Yeah.
Kirk in the Kelvin timeline. Yeah, Star Trek doesn't have. It has much less featured mother stories. Maybe a little bit with LeVar Burton's Geordi. Maybe with Cisco. Cisco has a lot of mommy issues.
Hmm.
He doesn't have too many daddy issues. He does have a lot of mommy
Well,
issues.
and in a blow for gender equality, now on Lower Decks we've got what's her name and her mom.
Yes. 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 Do you
And
know
then
any of the characters' names yet? I don't know any of the
they
characters'
don't.
names.
Well, it's Mariner. It's Beckett Mariner, but her mom is Captain Freeman, and I
Yes.
wonder if spoilers. I wonder if the Admiral dad. I mean, not that names matter
Yeah.
now, much less in the 21st century, but I keep wanting to hear what her dad's at the Admiral's name is. Like,
Yeah.
why did has the mother remarried? If we're still in traditional lineal naming of family names, did her mother get remarried, or is Beckett keeping? Did she take a name? Is Mariner her middle name because she doesn't want to have her mother's name? Like the kid getting out of
Yeah.
the glow of the parent and having their own identity. There's a whole little sidebar thing that has intrigued me from day one. But anyway, it's a blow for, hey, it's not just guys and their dads. Look,
Well,
it's a woman.
and
It's a
yeah,
mom.
and Linda mentions Raffi and her son in Star
Oh
Trek
yes.
Picard. I think that's a really great example of that, and I hope we get to see more
Well,
of that. Um,
this is the man.
yeah, that's a great example. Moving through the rest of the franchise, we talked a little bit about T'Pol and her struggle with Vulcan High Command or Starfleet. And to the comments section, thank you. They mentioned Vulcan Low Command would be a great story for Lower Decks to explore. I completely agree with you. I would love that. But getting us to Star Trek Discovery, we see that with Saru. Zahir mentioned Saru is a really great example. He's the only Kelpian to go from prey to predator. Yeah, absolutely. He's also the
So,
only Kelpian
well,
to leave. What's their planet called?
Kaminar.
Kaminar. Yes, he's the only Kelpian to leave to enlist in Starfleet. What's his
Now his
place?
sister, we just saw them being newly
Yes.
golden, and his sister shows up to help fight the fight at the end of the second season
Right,
finale.
right. I forgot about that.
So there's a dawn there, but still, yeah, you're overwhelmingly well. Discovery is all about everybody on their own. Can I throw one more in here from the chat?
Please.
Because I've been really bad about the chat. But
Yes.
Clayton had a point back on DS9. He says
Yeah.
that the Trek character I really connected with personally. This is at 1044 if you're trying to find it.
I'm looking for it.
The only Trek character I connected with personally was Julian Bashir. He started off
Oh,
as that
right.
gung-ho, self-important guy, and then he finds out about his genetic birthing and engineering, and then he gets kidnapped with a changeling double, and he
Yes.
escapes, and he has PTSD, and then he tries to help the other savants like himself. Then he's contacted by 31, and he's gone quite dark at the end. And then he winds up with Esri after he gave. Oh, and then he gives up on Dax, and then winds up with Dax at the end. And he puts it with O'Brien the whole time. There you go. Anyway, and yes, I mean, it's interesting how, I mean, you could find it. Part of this is the luxury of the longer. If a character was in a long series that went 7 years, you're going to get, or had a lot of movies, you're going to get a lot about them. So that's just, you're going to feel more like you've seen their change or heard them talk about their changes even off camera. Their
Speaking
evolution.
of Speaking of Clayton and Julian, he also mentions Julian had parent issues since his parents both decided to put him in learning, put this learning difficulty kid into genetic engineering and turned him into a supermind. Yeah, absolutely. And I love Julian. He's always a character I've very much connected with as well. Upon the rewatch, my recent rewatch of Deep Space Nine, I think he's definitely got pre-Me Too harassment problems that are displayed with Jadzia, and that's something about Star Trek is it's created in these different eras. We can go back to the original series. There's a lot of problems of sexism there. We can go back to 90s Trek and look at that. But, Star Trek continues to evolve, and we can both love these characters and criticize aspects of them as well. But Julian's a really great example of that. I think we've mentioned someone from every series. Picard, obviously, Picard is dealing with, what's his place as in retirement in Star Trek Picard. Yeah, I mean that whole ship, Larry. That everyone on that ship is dealing with this. What's
interesting with Picard is we saw the Q's false future. Picard's whole pivotal moment is the stabbing. At the bar, and you see, and he gets to do It's a Wonderful
Play human, play Dom John. Ha ha ha.
Ha ha
ha ha.
But you see,
Q, you talk and you talk, but you have no grump.
You really love those little Magnetel Dom John sticks.
Yeah.
Wow, Magnetel. Wow, that's.
Oh man, we are both such young chippers, aren't we, Larry?
You can tell it's Mattel. It's swell. Okay.
It's Micro Machines. You want to get your Micro Machines? We got a brand new Micro Machines Star Trek action figure set. Look at the set over here. You remember that guy?
Are you pounding the carpet as you do it?
Oh, right. Yeah.
I always thought what was wrong with the spastic kids on Saturday morning cartoons when they've got the speed cars and the hungry hippos.
It's Micro Machines.
They're always bashing the carpet. I'm like, who does that? Nobody does that. Are you spastic? What's wrong with you? I mean, I'm 8 years old.
Oh my gosh.
What's the spastic kid in the commercial? Is that what you have to do in the commercial? Live in LA and be spastic? Yes, as it turns out.
Oh my gosh.
I guess, as the more we're peeling these layers back, some of the series I thought weren't so great, or at least about showing us or telling us. I mean, McCoy. My God, I'm not even thinking about McCoy being a doctor, gets divorced and goes into Starfleet because of his divorce.
Oh, right. All she left me with were my bones.
Okay, that's fake. He didn't.
I love that line. I love that line.
Nice line, but it does nothing for the Prime universe. Kirk called McCoy Bones because it's short for Sawbones. Has nothing to do with his. Okay. Anyway.
Really? Was that the Prime Universe explanation?
Yeah, it's not on camera, but it's on all the guides. That's what fandom thought for 40 years until.
Yeah.
I was just thrilled to have.
It's a different universe. It can have its own thing.
Well, the divorce isn't. See, the divorce and that neither one have ever been on film, and I whipsawed in 2009. I went from yes, the divorce is on film to no, that's not the reason. Okay, it's oh boy, this is sure a different time stream. Okay, fine. It's like.
Speaking of different time stream, we mentioned Spock before, and we see Spock struggle with what's his role here in Star Trek 2009, in Star Trek Into Darkness, and in Star Trek Beyond. I think that's one continuous thread where Spock is really trying to figure out what is his role with the crew, what is his role with Starfleet, what is his role with Vulcans as an endangered species. And we see Spock Prime sort of guiding him in that, even after he passes away as well, the impact of Spock Prime. So again, it all comes back to Spock.
Oh, and the other character from the Kelvin universe that we have this huge path for, Keenzer. No.
So, Larry, should we jump into the counselor's log?
I think we've been dabbling in the counselor's log here off and on, yes.
Yeah, we've been... that was a very long briefing room. I'm going to do a very quick counselor's log here. This is where I do a little bit more of a deep dive into some of the psychology at play here. So just a couple of things I want to mention is we're often told as kids that find your passion. And I think that's actually really bad advice because what research has shown is people don't have one passion. They tend to have like 2 to 5 different things that they're passionate about. And so the message that a lot of us get in America is finding the one thing. But this is why we put finding your callings, finding your place. That's why we titled this episode that way, because there's many paths. I like to think of your future and your careers as a multiverse, not as one universe of possibilities, but a multiverse of possibilities. There's a lot of different
Where were you
ways.
when I was 18, Ollie? Come on.
Where was I when I was 18, Larry? You know how many times I could pull a tapestry on myself, but then I probably wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing this thing, which is
That would
why.
be pulling one thread too many. Yeah.
Yes. This is why that episode is one of my favorite episodes, because whenever I get in my head of like, oh, if I only knew this, and I'm like, well, no, because if I knew that, I probably wouldn't be here. And so, awesome. Thank you for that cue. So, how do you understand what to do? One of the easiest ways that I can advise people is to really understand what your character strengths are. Your character strengths are the things that when you act in using your strength, you tend to do very well, and it's also invigorating for you. So there's some things that we all do well, but we don't like doing. So for example, I'm pretty good at day-to-day tech support. I can fix stuff that breaks down in terms of technology, in terms of like computers. I can fix those. If there's a software interface, I can usually fix it at home, but I hate doing it. It stresses me out. I can work my way through it, but it's not something I enjoy. But working with people, talking to people, teaching, understanding, and helping people, that's stuff that really invigorates me. I love talking to people. So understanding your character strengths, because when you use them, not only are you invigorated, but you enter what's called a flow state. Flow states, this is a term that was coined by Mihail Csikszentmihalyi, a psychologist who talks about what happens when time passes by really quickly, you're really absorbed in a task, and you're not
You're
quite.
in the zone.
You're in the zone. Yeah. Some people might call it a runner's high. Some people might call it like a really deep state of work or a deep focus. But we all experience it when we're really absorbed and time begins to pass by. When you know what your character strengths are, and when you're able to apply them to a task and experience flow, that's what it's all about. That's what is going to help you to find your place. When you're able to do something that invigorates you and absorbs you. And there's so many pathways to do that. I'm going to talk about in the away mission how to discover yours, but I'm gonna leave it at that, and I'm gonna to be continued for a few minutes until we get through.
We need to.
Oh, K3.
K3. So here's a change of pace. Very quickly, K3, guys, for those of you who are new to Life Support Live, the K3, as you saw there, was the only reference to mental health, aside from a psycho tricorder, the only reference to mental health in the original series, and Dr. Noel being a psychiatrist. But no, Dr. McCoy's BioBed monitor has a K3 factor measuring brain activity. That's where the name came from. Here's a chance for us to do an old-fashioned Star Trek background deep dive into an aspect of what we're talking about today. And in the real world of Trek, I mean, there are lots and lots of stories. I was reading Heidi's background earlier about her. She'd had a life and things happening in life that determined what she was doing in animal husbandry and veterinary. And yes. I'm so behind on the chats, but I want to tell you the K3 for today is actually one of the writers who finally came to, here's amazing things. They love to say when Michael Piller had the open submission policy, there were 2 people whose sample scripts were bought as is. They bought a lot of ideas from people, especially if they weren't real writers. They'd take the idea, or they would buy the script and then hand it to somebody on staff or give it to a third party writer. a non-staffer to work on, depending on the time clock. There were two different people whose scripts were bought and then produced basically the way they were written, totally from outside. One was Ron Moore.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, welcome to Hollywood, Ron. When he wrote The Bonding, and it wasn't even the open script policy. He gave it to people at conventions, and it actually survived the slush pile and was read. And Michael Piller, desperate in his behind year when he was thrown into the mix, and that's when he came up with the open policy. He's like, I need all the help I can get. We'll listen to everybody around the world, crazy ideas, because it'll at least be something.
It'll be,
Well, it was the intact script for The Bonding they bought from Ron. The only other person whose script was basically made intact was a young writer named Renee Echevarria, who lived in New York and was all enmeshed in theater, and was a waiter on the side. And there's young Ron. Wow, that's tiny.
Yeah, it came up very small, so I had to.
That's small. This is a picture of Renee when he was like a first-year writer. Renee's story, yeah, here he's at Next Generation. He wrote The Offspring,
Yeah.
right? Data's
Wonderful
daughter-in-law.
episode.
That was his spec script, and they were like, "Oh my God, we can make this as is," basically,
Wow.
and did it. And they loved it so much. Of course, they were asking him back to write more, and he did. And he wrote several more. And they're like, "Oh my God, what are you doing in New York? Come to LA." And he's like, "Well," and in his head, he was always going to be a big playwright. He has a Cuban ancestry. He was going to be, he felt at home in New York. He was going to be a big theater guy, wanted to be a big Broadway and off-Broadway guy. And LA, that whole cross-country thing we carry around. Even New York and LA carry things about each other in your head, right? And they were onto him for a couple of years. Would you please come out here? And then finally he did, and he was welcomed. Do you have another picture there? He was welcomed to the party because he wound up working. Boy, tiny. He wound up working with these guys: Ron Moore, Brandon Braga, and Narain Shankar.
Oh, this is a very adorable photo. I love this.
This is when Jerry Taylor called them the boys. It's like Mama Jerry, Daddy Michael Piller, and the boys. And they could have used some female voices, I know. But Renee moved from New York, finally got over himself, and then wound up going to DS9 and working with that mob, getting to co-write, among other things, The Visitor, getting to write Trials and Tribulations and work on the great 30th anniversary show. So.
In Deep, oh gosh, it's also small. But in Deep Space Nine, then.
Yes, worked Deep Space Nine, and then jumped over when TNG ended, and then went on to create and co-create an EP. Co-created the 2200. He co-created Medium. He's worked on several shows back and forth, and now he's currently just put out a new show on Hulu that escapes me. Anyway, it's a combination, one of those fantasy and reality shows from the steampunk. Orlando Bloom was the actor. He's going to shoot me because I've gone blank on the name. Somebody in the chat will say. Anyway, just got renewed.
Chat will remind us, the hive mind.
Most right. But again, it doesn't matter where you are in life or what you're carrying around. Sometimes you have no idea what your path is going to be, and sometimes you have 2 years of the hot show Star Trek writers yelling at you. We will put you to work if you would just move. You can do so much more if you're here with us and not, doing script by fax.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, and that's so. Again, one of the, and there are all kinds of situations. A lot of the cast and the actors have their stories that are that way too, finding their path and finding their calling and finally settling in. And from this end of the journey, you go, well, of course. How else could this have come out? But that doesn't.
Yeah, totally, absolutely, Larry. Things make so much more sense in retrospect. But that's what our minds do so well. Our minds are able to find the story and the linear path. And when you really look at it, a lot of the things that brought us to where we are right now, it's not linear. It's messy. And speaking of finding your way here, we want to welcome Maureen. who said, "Wow, a Star Trek-based group therapy / writers' room meeting. How cool!" And
Well,
Scott said,
Maureen,
"That's pretty much us." Yeah, welcome, Maureen. Happy to have you here. Maureen also
Holly.
mentioned uh,
Oh,
that she went to a writer's session with Ron Moore at a convention, and the others were there, and everyone is generous. I think the writers have been really
back
wonderful
when they
to the
did their
fandom.
script workshop, Lolita,
Yeah,
I bet. Hey, can I say one more thing though about
please.
Renee?
Yeah, please do.
He is such a good guy. He has been very good. We not bonded, but we've had a good relationship since then. A lot of the people I worked with on Next Gen and the Berman shows and did my books out of. But if you want to hear some of Renee talk about these kinds of things, he was a guest on the Trek Files, my podcast
Mm.
from Roddenberry Network, several times, and he was an open house guest, which is my big event every year, free, on Portal 47. And I just want to remind everybody that
Speaking
if what I
of,
was just mentioning is cool, sounds good, if you want to get behind the scenes, I'm running my little weekend special this weekend again. I do this once or twice a month. If you want to come in during Corona time and not sign up for a whole year, but just a little 3-month sample, 3 months for the price of two, a 3 for 2 sample, just go to LarryNemecek.com and jump in, and we will get you fixed up, and you can come deep dive with. We've got some Portales on today, and you too can find yourself as one of those Star Trek fans who had no idea how much Star Trek you had no idea about. Yeah,
which if
well,
you spend any time with Dr. Trek over here, that will be you, because you'll realize there's so much that you didn't know. Larry, we have an answer for you. It's Carnival Row.
thank you.
Robert says it's Carnival Row. Thank you for that, Robert.
I keep wanting to say Cannery Row, which was
Oh, yeah. Well, of course, as a Californian, you want to say that,
I'm
which
in
is.
California. But yeah, Cannery Row was right up where the real life aquarium is now, that was in Star Trek 4 in Monterey, and I get it all
Yes.
in my head.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the away mission. This is
Yes.
the part of the show where I give you a task that you can do to apply what we're talking about to your own life. And today's it's probably one of the easiest that I have in terms of in terms of something to do. And before I share what it is, I've got a new question for our lifers here. Let us know in the comments section what Star Trek position would match your strengths. What role in the Star Trek universe matches your strengths? Who you are, the things that you love to do, the things that invigorate you. I can't wait to hear the answers. And Larry, I want to hear yours as well. What would be your position? So put in that thinking cap, I guess.
Oh wow.
So the way to apply this is very easy for this week, and I'll make it fast because I want to open up those hailing frequencies. So there's been an effort by psychologists to create a universal classification of character strengths. Are there certain strengths that exist across cultures? And the researchers who have been looking at this have identified 24 strengths that do appear to exist in globally. They created an inventory which you can take for free. The reason it's free is it contributes to their ongoing research about strengths and where they're located and how they're distributed among the global population. But it is free, and it's legitimately created with good folks backing it. It's called the Values. The VIA character strengths inventory. And if you go to www.viacharacter.org, that's viacharacter.org, that will
Maybe you
get
could put that in the chat, Dr. Ali, after we're done.
Yeah, I will. I will put that in the chat. And if you go there, it's about it'll take about 5 minutes or so, and the inventory will reveal what your character strengths are. These are the things that invigorate you when you approach a task with those strengths in mind. You'll probably do better at it. I really love this inventory. There's a few different categories of strengths. There's wisdom strengths, courage strengths, humanity strengths, justice strengths, temperance drinks and transcendence drinks. So check that out. I think you all will really like it. When I got my results, it was in some ways eye-opening and in some ways very validating. So check that out. And while I mentioned that, I've got a new project I want to share with the audience, Larry. A new project that's coming out on Monday. And if you are someone who is interested in strengths, in things that might help us through these tough times, then I've been working on a series secretly for a couple of months now with PBS. It's called Self-Evident. It's a series that really looks at what does it mean to be an American right now. It's going to be awesome. It comes out on Monday, and can I share the trailer, Larry?
No, I'm sorry.
Peek?
We don't have time.
Let me mess with the time continuum. I'm gonna roll back, give us a little bit more time. So hope you enjoy the sneak peek at Self-Evident.
These truths are self-evident.
That's where it comes from. Yep. Here we go. You could say 2020 was interrupted, but life goes on.
This is your story. You fell in love.
We believe in love! Full speed!
You marched in the streets.
Black Lives Matter!
You shared a drink.
You changed the melody.
You made new friends.
Hey, Dave!
And you covered new ground.
You tried. You failed.
Everything feels like a lot right now.
And you tried again.
Breathe in, 2, 3.
You're still telling your story.
Black lives do matter.
In a year of uncertainty, your perseverance is something we can count on.
It's self-evident.
Subscribe to PBS Voices for Self-Evident and other great shows. So I hope you enjoyed that little sneak peek here. And
What's thrust is what then?
It's funny because I muted Larry and I while we were watching this, and Larry said, I don't hear any of it. So sorry about that, Larry. Now I have to figure out how to. There we go. Time warp. There we go.
What have you done? Oh, very good.
I know. Okay. What have I done?
Are you the only talking head for that? Is that
no?
A series
It's me.
Or
It's a series, 10 episodes. We're gonna be we're coming out on Monday. So if you go to youtube.com/PBS Voices, you'll be able to see Self-Evident there. It comes out on Monday. There's 2 of us hosting. I'm the psychologist. My co-host is Danielle. She's a historian, Larry. She's a professor of history.
3 initials after her name. Yeah.
Yeah. Not my kind of Star Trek history knowledge, but like real history knowledge. So 10 episodes. Each episode is going to be a different theme, and our first episode is going to be about what does it mean to be a 10-year-old right now in this world. So I hope you all like it. Please go check it out. If you like it and support it, we might get a season 2. So check that out.
Is there a website? Is there a Facebook page? Is there any social media support to it?
PBS Digital Studios would be the main social media that's going to be promoting it. But the best way to promote it is just go to youtube.com/PBS Voices and subscribe to that channel, and you'll
airing on PBS stations. It's not a YouTube production.
It's going to be on YouTube, so it's free. Everyone across the world will be able to see it. Yeah.
But is it airing on PBS Air?
I don't know if PBS is airing it locally. I think that's yet to be determined.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with that, folks, let's open up those hailing frequencies.
Trying to catch up with the. Hey, and if we've got time, if someone wants to Skype in with us, right? Yes. I've been seeing. I'm going to apologize to everybody. I have been seeing so much commentary. I've caught a couple. I'm behind. We've had so many examples thrown out, but this is really resonating I think most of our topics do. But I've seen
Yeah.
some new faces and some new names, and I'm seeing all kinds of resonating here. Yeah.
I love people's the answers we're getting to what role would you have. Robert says security. LP Norman says, well, I was named after Nimoy, so science officer. Zahir says ambassador. Scott says the acting, teacher, theater director hobby of a chief medical officer for me.
Yeah.
Glenn says engineering tech with a specialty in computers. I definitely see that for you, Glenn, based on what we know. Libby says probably someone's assistant or antiques and uniques pickers, where I could then flip it to some Ferengi merchant at a profit. Triangulum says, I think my skill set would be perfect for turbolift control officer. Zahir says, I'd be a great security officer because I have trust issues. Clayton, commander of an outpost on the edge of nowhere. I functioned very well with a small group, not a huge ship's crew. I love that.
And Outpost 47 from
yes, way out
yeah,
there.
where 3 people are in the station. Yeah.
Libby, as our merchant, says I'd probably do well on Deep Space Nine. Zahir says I'd be a great first officer of a Galaxy or Ambassador class ship with my strong Type B tendencies, and that carpeting would be great. A great place for a Type B personality. Yeah, we're getting so many great responses here. So I love that. And thank you all for the support of the show. Maureen says she's very cool. I'll check it out. Robert says, bravo, Dr. Ali. Thanks, folks, for supporting that. Hope you enjoy that series. And Jared, you were asking last week, when are we going to get another Psych Show episode? Now you know why I haven't been doing many Psych Show episodes. I've been filming this series.
You've been lucky that he's done Life Support Live episodes.
Yeah, that's true sometimes.
We literally
sometimes
texted for 10 minutes this last week.
Yeah.
Got all this goodness.
It's been a wild ride. Larry, what would be your place in Starfleet? Or not even in Starfleet, in that 24th century future, 23rd or 24th century future? What's your place?
You know, what's funny to me is, and I didn't even realize at the time, but until, like, we took the ACT, not the SATs, and when I was 18, this famous 18 time, and there was a career, that test, that values test you were talking about.
Yes.
Something akin to that was a career,
yes.
Interest inventory.
Yeah.
As part of the ACT, and I took it, and it was all over the place. And I was kind of shocked because I'd never thought in these terms before, but it was the first time. Basically, because all I could think about was, like I said, teaching this or that or whatever. And I didn't see myself leaving the Midwest for any, like, LA or New York, what? And for the first time, the overwhelming thing that came back said communication. Communicator. And I had done, I enjoyed our high school play. I was editor of our high school paper. I didn't think of them as, but this basically coalesced as a communicator, which means like taking facts and synthesizing them and getting them to people, or helping people communicate, or helping people, reach each other. But I had never stopped to think about reporter, and now even beyond that, reporter, interviewer, host, fact synthesizer, and then do it on paper with lead time, and then maybe even, oh my God, do it on the run live with people, and people that when there's a lot at stake and you're trying to, anyway, I had never had that coalesce until I saw the dorky little career interest assessment. And I went, oh, communication and interpretation. So I don't, I guess ideally that would, they have historians in Starfleet. Wayland.
Yes.
Was a ship's historian, a literature historian even. So I don't know, be that or something in the Federation where it's, the Dominion or the Romulans might say it was Federation propaganda, but something in that where it's, communicate. And if it's within Starfleet, something like that.
Well,
I
that
guess.
can be within Starfleet. I could see you definitely serving in the Academy or at Starfleet headquarters in the archives. You would be.
They have a newspaper and they have a yearbook at Starfleet Academy. I think it was Harry Kim was on the newspaper staff. So hopefully I'll do better than Harry Kim. But
I could see you there. I mean, the obvious parallel for me would be ship's counselor, but I don't know. I think I'd have a lot more fun in the diplomatic corps. I think trying to maybe not first contact, but yeah, I think second contact, third or fourth contact. I think part of the team that is establishing longer-term relations with new worlds, new cultures, being a part of that team that's transitioning new member planets to Federation citizens, and how does that work? How do you deal with all of the change that comes with just joining the Federation? That would be really exciting and interesting. I think it would make it hard to have a family because you're constantly being sent to different places. So I don't quite like that part. So maybe I do that for a few years and then I can just work for the Federation Council or something in some way. I think that would be a ton of fun. I'd love working with all the different species and making those Federation Council meetings run well. I think that would be a ton of fun.
Yeah. Again, guys, I'm apologizing because I'm so far behind on this chat, and this chat is so amazing this week. It feels like we really touched a nerve, struck a chord, touched a nerve, or just,
That would be the fourth
Hit a
Dr.
curve.
Trekism, I think. We're on a roll here today, Larry.
Oh, you have a funny
Sean.
definition of role.
Sean, thank you for sharing the news release for Self-Evident. I appreciate that. And Sean also says that he would be a science officer. So you can do a lot with a science officer. You can do basic research. You can do applied research. You can be working on a ship. You can be working on a starbase. You can make a Genesis device. There's so many things that you can do. You can be enlisted, but also not enlisted and pursue science. There's a lot of pathways there.
Get those cool civilian science, token outfits. Wear a jumpsuit. Wear the token jumpsuit.
Oh man, the Star Trek jumpsuits. Oh my gosh. That's one thing I'm really happy about with New Trek, whether it's Kelvin Timeline, Star Trek Discovery, or Star Trek Picard. Our civilians look like real people now and not like, I don't know, the jumpsuit.
Upholstery fabric models?
Yeah. People actually look like they would be civilians. I appreciate that. Well, Enterprise did that too. Civilians look good in Enterprise. They looked like actual civilians.
Don't you go hating on Bill Tice civilians now, don't you? Early Bob Blackman there. Don't you do that?
I love all of his work for the uniforms. The uniforms are wonderful, but it's so hard. This is the creators of Back to the Future talk about this, that the ending to Back to the Future 1 was a bit of a joke. They never thought there was going to be a sequel, so they're like, yeah, send them to the future. And then when a sequel was greenlit, they're like, oh gosh, now we have to make a future. No one wants to make a future because you're always going to get it wrong. And boy, did they get it wrong in nearly every way. A fax machine in every
shiny
room.
metallic everything, and everybody
yeah. You can receive your faxes in the middle of the street. Flying cars, the holographic movies, Jaws 19. So many things they got wrong. Hoverboards.
Well, Jaws got within a couple. It felt like. Yeah.
Was there anything they really nailed in Back to the Future 2? Maybe.
Well, hoverboards or whatever, but hoverboards are people have tried to do hoverboards.
Yeah, and they're so not cool.
No, but
I think the screens, like the big TV screens, FaceTime, They sort of did that video calls, but a lot of people did video calls. We certainly don't have a Mr. Fusion device. Right, wrong genre. Sorry.
No, I say Star Trek did view screens. We've all been
Star Trek
doing,
did view screens. Right.
I just did a newsletter for my Trekland list this week, and I said, hey, we've all been living our Star Trek summer here. We've all been living on boxes on screens.
Jared is mentioning I expect to see Ali in a scant uniform at the Life Support Live retreat. Hey, I'd support I'd wear the skank. I'm very pro skank.
And Jared, when is our next Life Support Live retreat?
And where? Which?
I forget if it's a Denny's or an IHOP.
Yeah, or a Radisson Inn. Jared is our unofficial organizer of the 2022 Life Support Live retreat. So thank you for organizing, Jared. Oh gosh. Maureen says my upstairs neighbor kids have hoverboards. They got banned in New York City, Larry, because they had these. Some of them had these exploding batteries, and so New York City just banned them.
Oh, you mean the hoverboard? I thought you meant screenings of Back to the Future Part 2. Okay.
Oh no. Yeah, and Scott is right. I do have. I mentioned this that the week you disappeared a little bit, Larry. I forgot for a second that I have this right over here. I have my hoverboard.
Oh, you can tell it's Mattel. It's swell.
Yeah, it is. There you go. Hey, nicely done.
Well, I'm not exactly doing Maddie Mattel. You can tell it's Mattel. It's swell. Somebody, I'm going to apologize here. I just caught somebody was talking about. You can remember the Vietnam vets coming back. They hated their M16s because they jammed all the time. Their rifles.
Yeah.
And the time in the 60s when they say they gripe and say you can tell it's Mattel, it's swell.
Jared says Life Support Live Retreat YMCA Billings, Montana. Jared, if we're having a life support meeting in Montana, it's not in Billings, Montana. There's only one place where.
Well, there's a tour. We'll get on a bus and go over to Bozeman.
Yes.
And we'll all see the statue.
The Zephram Cogman reaching into the sky.
Yeah. They made a statue of me?
Oh, yeah. And you're standing right at the location. I wish I had a picture of this. I love that scene. Oh, I just love Star Trek First Contact.
If you made 10 years later, you would have had a Starfleet padized version. Everybody's
selfie. Yeah, can I take a selfie with you, Mr. Cochran? I gotta pee. No, I didn't. I just messed it up. Leak. I don't detect any leaks. Oh gosh, it is that time of day, Larry, where we are losing structural containment. So, folks, we would love to stay in touch with you. We've been doing a fun little caption contest each week. Dr. Trek has been finding these wonderful little moments from our clips, and we've been doing a caption contest. If you want to participate, those always give me a lot of laughs during the week.
Making them that whole cloth.
Go to facebook.com/group/lifesupportlive. That is our Facebook group where we keep in touch as the week goes on. And Larry, there's a number of ways for folks to keep in touch with us individually. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Right. Well, if you're watching us live right now, you're probably either on Facebook, and that's Larry Nemecek's Trekland, which is my overall Facebook place. I've got pages for other things, including Portal 47 and my documentary. If you're on YouTube, yay! Would you please subscribe? I got into my YouTube channel kind of late in the game and as an active thing, so please subscribe while you're there and share that. But I'm on Twitter at Larry Nemecek and LarryNemecek.com. You can come get on my list. I do surveys and fun stuff there too. Every Tuesday at 1 p.m. I'm right here if you're on Facebook or YouTube. I'm right here at 1 p.m. Tuesdays Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern for Trekland Tuesdays Live. And if you're at LarryNemecek.com, again, if you want a deep dive with the Portal 47ers and I, jump in on that three months for the price of two special. I'd love to see you. It expires Monday, midnight Sunday. But otherwise, we're here all year. Has the music started yet?
The music has started as Libby said, "Oh no, time for the sad music." And Heidi's like, "No, the sad music." Heidi also mentioned that my top strength on the VIA is love of learning. That's my wife's top strength. So you are in good company as well. Yeah. We should share our results.
Why don't we start a post on the live page, on the Facebook page?
Yeah.
The
What
we'll
folks?
start a post about, and everybody just put down what your strengths came out to be.
That would be a ton of fun. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
So I am at Ollie Mattu on Twitter. Please check out both the Psych Show on YouTube, but check out PBS Voices so you can be the first to see Self-Evident when it comes out on Monday. I think you all are really going to like it. Every episode really brings us to a place of hope and optimism for the future and a way forward through all of this mess. So I think our fellow lifers are going to get a lot out of that. And Larry, we have no idea what we're talking about next week because we have no idea where Lower Decks is going to take us, but I can guarantee it's going to be a fun discussion, it's going to be a hopeful discussion, it's going to be an optimistic discussion because that's what Life Support Live is all about.
Times.
Yes. Yeah.
Boldly going.
We're going to keep boldly going. Thank you all. Scott said thank you for this. We thank you for being here. Thank you everyone for all of your support, all of your kindness. We can't wait to see you next week. And until then, live long and prosper.
Yes. Trek well, everybody. What am I doing? Trek well, everybody.